All right, we're recording. Perfect. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So today's session is going to be on the other side of things compared to last time. So the last webinar I did was a lot on nutrition. I appreciate all the feedback as well. I got a lot of positive feedback about that one, so it kind of helps me kind of visualize and see what you guys are looking for too, and what really helps you guys grow as well. So I appreciate all that feedback. Really glad it was helpful. Today we're going to go to the other side, a little bit more on the application side. So through the years of working with green trainers and stuff, I've seen a lot of things that just comes down to coaching cues to get movements down, where maybe trainers are just struggling to get their clients to do specific movements that are really important. So we're going to go through a lot of that stuff today. So let me pull up the slides here and share my screen. All right, you guys can see my screen okay? Yeah. Excellent. So let me pull up the slideshow here. So a lot of this is going to come down to making it make sense for the client. So I'm going to go over some verbiage, movement cues, common things we see and corrections to make. I also am going to have you guys get a little bit more involved in this webinar and kind of bring some ideas to the table too, and we get to specific movements. So maybe there's something you say or do that works really well that maybe none of us really thought before. Okay, so we all can learn from each other too. So I want to involve that today as well. So first we're going to talk about coaching cues for movement. Why there's issues learning the movement, in addition to applying to what makes sense to them. So using everyday things to make it make sense when you're talking about the movement. So when we apply those kind of things that they're used to working with or visualizing or seeing during the day that they always do, sometimes it really helps them make it make sense for them. We're also going to go into coaching techniques that kind of help bust through those movement plateaus maybe you guys are having. Verbiage to use. In addition to movement progression, what makes sense, load progression, those kind of things we see are the issues coming into play when we are working with clients and they're just not getting movements down. So it happens in two areas. One is going to be a client issue. The other is going to be a trainer issue. So it takes two to tango, right? So we got to make sure we're correcting both ends, make sure we're getting that application involved there. So the first thing is going to be client issues. A lot of times it's down to body awareness. A lot of these people just are not aware of their bodies and how they can move. So if you guys think about it, you guys are used to moving weekly all the time, doing these movements forever, where this is their first time doing it. So they're really unaware of what their bodies are capable of and how to move them. So that's one of the first issues we see that we're going to want to try to tackle. It also could be just lack of mobility and strength. Maybe the reason they're not getting that movement down is strictly because of their mobility and strength issues that we'll probably have to address first before we can even get any bigger range of motion in that movement or even better at it. The other one is loss of focus and frustration. Sometimes clients get really frustrated easily if they're not getting something instantly. So that's going to come into coaching as a trainer, just working on pieces bit by bit as we go through the movements and just breaking it down so it makes sense so they don't get so frustrated so quickly. Trainer issues. A lot of times trainers are talking way too complex of terms when trying to explain these things. As trainers, sometimes we forget how far, once again, our education is, and using some of these words they never heard before is not going to help them make that movement make sense to them. Sometimes trainers are all over the map when explaining movements. So what I mean by that is, like, when you guys are explaining dynamic warm-up, we can't be talking about knee to chest to toe to head. It's got to make sense, make it fluid. So I'm going to go into some areas of that cause issues. Trainer doesn't do the movement themselves. This is another issue that we see just with trainers is when they're trying to design programming and implement it, they haven't done the movement before themselves, so it's going to be really hard for them to do this. So always practice the movements you guys are implementing, or at least be able to do it, okay? Worst thing we can do is try to go into this and you can't even do it yourself. So coaching movement rules. Here's some good rules to follow. You probably heard me say this before. I teach it in onboarding, is teach from the toe and up. So you're going to want to go from the toe and up because it's going to be very systematic for both ends. People learn way better if you coach toe and up instead of trying to hit all these different areas of the body at different times. We're always going to want to use simple words when we do this stuff. Also, appropriate levels of movement are going to be important as well. So keeping the cool stuff for later. I'm going to go into each one of these segments in more detail, but this is kind of the overview of what we're going to talk about for rules of movement. We got to educate the importance of learning the base movements before we get into complex movements. All too often, trainers are very excited to get to the fun, exciting movements when they can't even do the base movement first, okay? If we do this, focus on the base movements, their progression is going to be much faster. That's also going to save you guys a ton of time when it comes to programming. They need to master this stuff before they can move on, so focus on it, especially if they're brand new. Their first program should last them, a decent amount of time because they're just getting those base movements down. They're not going to learn that movement, 8 new movements that you teach them, or 6, whatever it is you're doing, in one session. That's impossible. So you're going to be repeating movements over and over again in the beginning, get that base set, and then progress from there. And we'll go into details of that as well. So let's first talk about toeing up. The reason we want to do this is you won't forget key points. So for example, a walking knee hug, I see a lot of trainers typically always forget to talk about the toe when they're coaching it, and even themselves, they have their toe down when they're explaining it. So this way, if you're coaching it, you yourself are getting that toe up because you're talking about it, and then we're going through the movement in a systematic pattern. So toe to all the way to the head, okay? It's also easier for that client to learn as well. So let's do this as just an example real quick for you guys, is the walking knee hug and the dynamic warm-up. So when you guys do this, make sure you're talking and demoing at the same time, because people are visual learners as well. And also the verbal cues to the visual really helps with learning. Back when Kyle and I used to run a sports performance center, we had a facility where we were able to teach the movement with visual and audio, and the progression of movement happened so much faster just because they had both cues happening at the same time. So use those together. So literally how you would talk about is bring your knee up, bring your toe up. So at the same time, you're going to do that. Then you grab the knee, then go to the chest, keeping that chest up, pull the knee to the chest, hold for 1 to 2 seconds, and step forward. Sometimes when I hear trainers explaining walking knee hug, they're talking about the knee, then they go to the chest, and then they go to the pull, and then they're all over the map when they're talking about head and knee and all that kind of stuff. So just keep it systematic. Walk yourself through it. Keep it simple. And then as you get more systematic with it, it's going to get a lot easier. Just an example of this is you guys aren't going to be perfect right away. So yesterday I was in one of our Milwaukee clubs working with a trainer, and literally part of the dynamic warm-up is she was a little bit all over the place, right? So when we do this, she was just baffled. She's like, how do you do it so easy and systematic? Well, first, I've been doing it for a very long time, right? So give yourself, guys, a little credit, but practice is going to make perfect. So if you guys don't practice in a systematic way, you're always going to be all over the map when you talk about it. So get in the practice of doing this, and it's going to make things much more easier and smoother. Education's going to go way faster. So we want to talk in simple words, okay? Like I said before, they don't understand the verbiage you guys are using. So when we're talking about testing, let's say we're talking about the squat, well, to them, we want them to know this is working on lower body strength and mobility. They know what that means. If you guys are saying we're working on lower extremity neural adaptation, that's not going to make sense to them, right? It makes sense to you, but to them, it doesn't make sense. Dynamic warm-up, if we're talking about lateral squat, we're talking about we're stretching the groin there when we do it. The more advanced term would be elongating adductors, okay? We wouldn't say that to the client. This doesn't make sense to them. They don't even know what their adductors are. Reps and breathing. So this is a very common one you guys talk about when you guys are training, right? So simple cues, breathe out on the hard part, in on the easy part. We don't talk about exhale on concentric and inhale on eccentric, right? They're not gonna know what that means. You know what that means, they don't. So just think about keeping it simple when you guys explain this stuff. This is a big one. So a lot of times, like I said, trainers get really excited, especially when they're green, to get to the fun, cool stuff because they want to be that fun, exciting trainer. The problem is most of your clients are not prepared for this kind of stuff anyway. So you are kind of doing yourself a disservice by doing this stuff because they cannot progress and get better in strength and mobility because they can't even complete the movement anyway. So I always start with the basics, okay? So beginning clients, they need to master the main compounds first, okay? It needs to be squat and hip hinge. They're push and pulls. If they can't do any of that stuff perfectly, they're not ready for anything else because every exercise stems from these movements, okay? If you're doing a push-up, everything stems from that, even like bench, all that kind of stuff. You're stemming from those basics to more advanced movements. So this is what an experienced trainer would do teaching a bilateral squat. Or phase one is you're going to go into a TRX squat or some sort of assisted movement for that, that movement you're going into, some sort of assistance to get them down in range of motion and strength. Phase 2, now you're going to progress them to more of free form. They're not assisted anymore. And now they're actually doing it without any help, okay? Once again, you need to work on range of motion with this before we move on to the next phase. Phase 3, once they are perfect at body weight squat, then we add load, okay? After we add load, then we're going to go into more advanced loads, like back squat, front squat. A green trainer, what they're going to do is they're going to go right into something crazy like BOSU overhead barbell squat because it's fun, it works on balance in the core, right? We know that's not going to be effective because they can't even body weight squat to begin with. So do your best to keep the cool for later times, okay? You can make this basic stuff fun, be a part of the exercise, the stuff we talk about, but we got to get the master of the basics before we get advanced. A lot of times I see trouble with loading prep with trainers. So once again, it's a systematic thing, right? You must pass the steps of these before you move on to the next. So this is a good checkpoint for you guys when you guys are going through progressions here. So first one is movement assisted, like I talked about. Then you're going to go into movement. Sometimes trainers forget that body weight is a load. Okay, if these people are obese, they're carrying a load around all the time, right? So that's why once you guys get them lean, their legs are ginormous because they're used to carrying that load around all the time. Their calves are big, all that kind of stuff, because they have all this resistance training already in their life. So understand that they already have a load on top of those limbs that they're trying to squat with, okay? So analyze the movement, look at the range of motion and patterns of their body, make sure that's down pat. If it's not, then you're going to have to fix those imbalance and mobility issues before we add load, okay? Always think movement first, then load. Okay, all too often you'll see people at the gym, right? They go right into that squat, that back squat in the rack, and they can't even get a quarter of the way down without messing up, right? So they're trying to put all this weight on their back, and it's not going to work. So I always work movement first, then get more advanced. Same thing with me. When I first started back squatting, I needed to work on range of motion. So what I did is I left my ego out the door, worked on body weight movement, mobility drills, went to bar, and now I can go really deep with my squat, almost to the floor basically, and then really heavy loads. So I left the ego out, then you can build from there. Systematic loading. So also when you load, you want to be smart about it, right? We want to do too much too soon. So what we're looking here is first, once again, look at assisted, because that's going to allow the load to be not too much for the body, especially if they're on the obese side. Then we go into body weight movement, because once again, that can be load. Then implement the light load, which would be band, med ball, that kind of stuff. And then go into independent loading, so like dumbbell, kettlebell, that kind of stuff. After that, then barbell. All too often, sometimes we see people going straight to barbell instead of independent load. It should be the other way around. Get those mechanics down, then hit the barbell. So when we look at lower and upper, here's some good rule of thumbs for you guys when we look at systematic loading. Lower extremity, usually about 5 to 10 pounds each limb. And then upper is going to be 2.5 to 5 pounds each limb. It's typically what you're going to see for most clients for progressions and load, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into some movements, and this is where I want you guys jumping in too, okay? So what I did here is I recorded what we typically see out of our clients, or things we see at the gym, and then I go into the correct movement as well. In between these two movements that I recorded, I go into coaching cues for each movement. What I want you guys to do is, one, when I do this typical drill, point out to me the main mistakes that are being done here, and then how we would coach them. So just give me some coaching cues that make sense for that client, okay? So the first one's going to be a standard push-up or incline push-up. So I'm going to play the drill here. So you can see my movement. So what are the major things that you're seeing wrong with this movement?
The butt's not dipping down with the body. It's not staying in a plank form.
Exactly, yep. So my core's not tight. What else did you guys see?
Bringing your face down to the box rather than your chest.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm not in a straight line. I'm forcing myself down because my hips are too high. What's one other major one that we saw there? Let me play it one more time for you guys, because it might not have been as
Elbow.
Yep, absolutely. The elbows. Very common mistake that you'll see is those elbows flare out when they're doing that push-up. So awesome. So a lot of times when I was doing some of this stuff, guys, as you get more in depth with some of these movements as I record these, it's funny. It's actually harder to do the movement wrong now than it is correct. So I really had to try to do these incorrectly. We had to do like a few takes sometimes. So once you get the neural adaptation down, your clients will be able to do it correctly on their own, systematically, just like a habit. Okay, so form these habits. So as coaches, what are some of the things you would say? So if we're talking about elbows, what do you guys coach on? What do you say? Give me an example.
Tuck those elbows in, keep them close and tight.
Okay. How about anybody else? Matt, I think you said something.
In your pockets.
Okay, cool. I like that one. So in your pockets, what do you mean by that?
But keep them in your pockets, so keep them like tight.
Like the elbows? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What do you guys do talking about hip? What's a coaching point there that makes sense?
I just tell them to drop their hips.
Okay. Drop the hips down. Okay. Anybody else?
Toward the floor. Push them toward the floor.
Okay, so keep kind of like keeping the core tight, pushing the hip down more.
Yep.
Okay.
Spine neutral.
Okay. Yeah, we look for spine neutral, but to a client, what does that mean to them?
Just keep your spine straight.
Yeah, yeah, spine straight, right? Yep, so same kind of thing. Yep, we're so used to saying those terms that sometimes we forget. So here's some stuff that hopefully that helps too. I actually learned one of these from Alan. He's on this one right now, actually. I got to thank Alan for this one. He did the letter A, not I or T. So when I was onboarding him for the training side of stuff, Alan's an MSM for us, but he used the letter A, not I or T, when I was testing him on push-up. And I really like that because you're forming that I or that A in your hands and arms when you're coming up and down compared to an I or T, because we like that 45-degree angle when we're doing that push-up. Typically, when we go too far outside or maybe too far in, that's going to be some rotator issues possibly. So that was a good one there, Alan. So thanks. I use that from now on. So see, we're always learning, right? So also, like, I prefer you guys doing the incline push-up off of a box more than the knee push-up. There's a few reasons for that. One, the knee push-up, it's really easy for people to cheat that and push their hips out. It's really hard for them to control it. But also progression-wise, the knee push-up isn't as good. So what I mean by that is an incline push-up, one, you're keeping the full integrity of the movement, right? We're not changing it. You're still in a straight line from balls of the feet and everything. But you can also progress better too. Okay, you can start at a high box and work your way down in boxes. So I typically prefer this one better because it's more core engagement and keeps integrity of the movement compared to a knee push-up. I'm not saying knee push-ups are wrong, just something to think about when you guys are coaching. Okay. So obviously this is more of a correct one. I don't need to show that too much. All right, so next one, RDL hip hinge. So this one is obviously one of the more difficult movements that we have to teach our clients. And it's one of the hardest ones to get them to learn, but it's a huge foundation to a ton of movements, right? Getting at athletic position, RDL movements. There's a lot of stuff the hip hinge is needed for, and it's tough to teach. So we're going to go into some of those coaching points to really help progress that speed of learning. So typically this is what you see. This one did take me quite a few takes when Steve was recording me. So this one I kind of finally got it down to some of this typical stuff you see when you're trying to teach hip hinge. I'm almost kind of pushing too far back than I wanted to do it wrong. But what are some of those common mistakes that you're seeing in that movement there? Pinpoint them out.
Dipping the chest forward.
Yep, absolutely. That's a big one. What else do we see?
Your back's kind of rounded.
Yep.
Weights on your toes.
Yep, weights on my toes. And what's one of the other ones? I tried to exaggerate it. I did a little bit better there later on. What was that?
Knees are bending.
Yeah, exactly. They're always trying to squat at the knee, right? To keep that squat movement going. In fact, when I was in Franklin yesterday I was shadowing a session, and the client was having issues with that squatting down. So it's a very common thing. So coaching points. What do you guys typically say to coach on this? What are some good things that make sense?
I tell my clients if they're doing it in front of the mirror to look at themselves in the mirror to keep their chest and their head up.
Okay. So, but yeah, not too much up, right? We don't want to be forcing that neck up out of alignment. But yeah, okay, using a mirror for visual cues, perfect. Anybody else?
I'll do it in front of a wall and have people like try to touch their butt to the wall.
Beautiful. Yep, I love that one. Yep, get the feel for it, get that hinge, push the butt out. Okay. Anybody else? Some good tools that you guys use?
I'll use the same thing over a bench so they can, like, if they feel like they're going back too far, they can sit down rather than wall. Very similar.
Explain that to us, Mark, real quick.
Your butt's driving back as far over the bench as you can.
Okay. Oh, I gotcha. Okay, so you're putting their like legs up to the bench and you're making them push their butt out?
I put a little bit forward, probably like 6 inches above the bench.
Okay.
And hips are coming
Okay,
back.
cool. I kind of like that. I've never heard of that one before, so I like that. Very cool. All right, so let's go into some I do here. Hopefully it helps you guys because once again, we're trying to make it make sense, right? So pushing the butt back. So like use the wall for a touch point, kind of like what Matt said. Also like hip check. So I used to work with a ton of hockey players. So to get the movement down, I'd say, all right, try to hip check me. And it's like an instant like movement that they do in their hips that they're so used to doing, and they just couldn't do it when on demand. You know what I mean? So use things that make sense. Another one I like to use is stop me walking past. So I'll pretend I'm walking past them, and I'm like, you got to stop me with your butt. And they got to stick that butt out as I try to walk past them. That kind of teaches them to push the butt back instead of squatting with the knee. Another cue is sometimes punched in the gut. So what do you do when you're punched in the gut? You like instantly go back with your hips, right? You like jump back and get hit. So I've been punched in the gut before, and that's what happens to me. So, so anyways, when we're doing that, your hips go back, right? So just make it make sense. What would you do if you got hit? You would go back. Knees stuck in a slight bend in the knee. So no squatting. So think about keeping them completely stuck in that movement. They don't move out of that slight bend like you have there, and you got to use your butt to push back. So all good cues that you guys gave. Those are just some extra ones. So once again, this is correct movement. It's working on that hip hinge, pushing the butt out, slight knee bend. All right, now we're going to look at RDL with a bar. Very common mistakes with this one. A lot of people make. Even trainers themselves, I've seen mistakes with this. So here's what we typically see. Okay, with that movement, what did you guys pick out? Well, someone's trying to say something.
Shoulders were forward.
Yep, exactly. My shoulders weren't back. What else?
Your bar's coming away from your body.
Yep, absolutely. Another one. We have to play it one more time here. I'm still kind of doing a little bit too good in one area, but what's another mistake?
Are you trying to round your
I
lower
would say
back?
your back
Yeah,
rounded.
yeah, I'm trying to round everything and just kind of like move my upper body and my back to bring it down instead of my hips. It's really hard for me to like get my hips out, but that's what I was trying to do. So, so one is like cue is the drag across the leg, right? So keeping that air tight between the legs when we have that bar. All too often that bar is way too far out from the body when we do this movement. What are some other cues you guys use to coach the movement? Any good ones you guys think you could share?
I always tell them to slide the bar just past their knees.
Yep. Okay, cool. Anything else when it comes to back or hips?
Act like you're humping the air, basically, you know, give them that cue. But I tell them, like, act like you're going to pound the air and just
Okay.
the hips only.
All right, that's a new one. All right. So yeah, so when you're driving through, you mean like kind of like squeezing the glute at the top? Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha. All right. That's visual, I guess. Some other ones you guys can do is no air or light between the legs and bar. So sometimes that makes more sense for them. So when you're on the side, you shouldn't see that. A lot of times I tell a lot of my powerlifting and bodybuilding athletes and stuff that we ain't bleeding, we ain't deadlifting, right? So this is more for a deadlift, but to get the point is you should be dragging that bar basically across that leg, right? So there should be no space between there. If we're getting too far away, if that bar gets too far away from the body, what happens? What's the issue that we could cause there?
Rounding back.
Yep. And then if we're doing that, what could the injury be?
Pain on the lower lumbar.
Yeah. So low back issues, big time. So a lot of times that load, if it's too far away from the body, that's more stress on the low back. The other thing too is that you guys pointed out that I did wrong was the shoulders were not set, right? So we want to set those shoulders back and keep that locked. We don't want to let it round forward, just like when you deadlift. So we're going to look at the correct form here. So once again, a lot of mistakes sometimes people make is they think they have to go all the way to the floor with that. You don't have to. Whoa, what is going on here? All right, so another one, overhead press. So this is a common mistake we see a lot of people making. Very common movement we use for a push movement. So let me go through it here for you guys. Okay, what are you guys seeing wrong that I'm doing?
Pushing away from your body.
Yep, very common mistake.
Touching at the top really is unnecessary.
Yep.
Your core's not tight.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, you guys nailed them. So that's just my gut, but just kidding. So anyways, coaching cues for this. What would you guys do? This is how to use. I say push through the ears. That kind of helps it make sense that we're going in alignment with our ears as we're pressing up. You guys use anything else?
At the finishing, make sure you have a straight line, basically from elbow to elbow.
Okay.
180.
Okay, cool.
I tell people to tighten their glutes to protect their back.
Oh, okay. Yep, just keeping that core tight in general. Okay, I like that. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, like, elbows stopping at the L's, right? So, a lot of times in this movement we're teaching them, we don't want them to get too low at their elbows. We want them pushing down from below here, especially when they're beginners. They're not ready for that kind of range of motion yet. So, watch for that. Also, if we're using a bar, so you do dumbbell and then bar, right? If we're doing the bar, good coaching point for that is like head through the window. So when we're pressing through with that bar, obviously if they just go straight up, they're going to hit their chin, right? So chin goes back, and then we put our head through the window with that bar. A lot of times we see people using bar for overhead press. They just go and press up, right? And then once again, we're not in alignment. We're still slightly ahead of those ears, or they're trying to force it and then come back through. We want to make sure that that head is solid. We go back, push through the window. So head goes through that window. The other one I like to do is turtle head out, right? So like a turtle sticking his head out of the shell, right? So that kind of movement kind of teaches athletes to move the head, not their entire like body and shoulders through their body when they do that. So this is more of the correct version going through it. I'm not going to do too much about it, but you guys get the concept there. A little more tighter everywhere. So, all right, squat. One of the most common ones that we have to coach, and one of the most complex. So let's go through this real quick. This one took me quite a few takes to do it. Even start laughing at the end, but I'm trying to do what we commonly see. All right, looks pretty common with what you guys see. So what are some of the coaching points there, or issues that we're seeing, excuse me, without no coaching points, but issues. Yeah, too far forward. What else,
And
guys?
focal point.
In your back.
Something about the back. What was that?
Focal point of the back. So if you're looking at the ground, you're going to be driven and drawn toward the ground.
Okay, cool. Okay, yep. And then what else did you guys see? Let me play it another time here.
Up on your toes.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning too much into my toes there for sure. Yep.
Your feet are out.
Butt's not getting depth.
Yep. I'm not getting too low either, and that's mainly because the chest too, right? Clients will lead with that chest when they come down. Yep. So good job, guys. All right, coaching points. What do you guys do to help squat? What are those common cues you guys use?
Chest up like you're sitting.
Okay. Yep. What else? That was a good one because you used common sense terms, right?
Yep.
Sit back like you're sitting in a chair.
Okay. Yep. I like that one. Gets them to think about the hips and everything. What else?
You're about to pop a squat outside.
Okay, that's a good one. Yep. Yep. That's definitely more of a male thing, right? But yep. Anybody else?
Pelvic tilt your hips.
What did you just say?
Pelvic tilt your hips.
No. Too advanced, buddy. You're thinking in your terms, dude.
They're having them do it. They know what it is. From now on, they'll know what that movement is.
That's okay. Coach them on pelvic tilt. That's sure. But think day one, right? Day one, what are you trying to do?
Right away, I'd put their hands and get them in a pelvic tilt and say, hey, that's a pelvic tilt. Now you know.
All right. Smart ass. But it's true. You can coach them on the terms. But yeah, for sure. All right, cool. All right, so some things we can look at. Pretend to sit in the chair if someone said that. Another one is sit straight down, not back. So knees kind of go forward a little bit more and butt back. So what I mean by that is a lot of times people lead way too much in the hips. Even like when I'm working with clients that are like bodybuilders and stuff and they're trainers, they tend to lead too far back in the hips because they used to be always coached on, you can't let the knees go over the toe, which is absolutely false. You absolutely can, and you almost need to get full depth. You just got to make sure your heel's not coming off the ground. If your heel comes off the ground, that's a problem. That's knee issue, and that's when that strain to the knee is bad. So in order to squat properly, almost everyone has to get full depth, let their knee go past the toe, to make sure their heel's planted. So a lot of times they're so concerned about those knees not going over the toes that they sit way too far back in the hips, and it totally screws up the entire mechanics of it. So think about sitting straight down, not back. Another way to get that cue across is break the knees, then go straight down, right? So break that knee, get that knee bend in, and then go straight down. That'll help them get that cue. Another cue that I didn't put on here is like if you're doing back squat with someone, tell them that bar needs to go straight down, right? We don't want it. If you get the hips too far back, that bar goes forward, and that load is going forward instead of straight down. That bar should be in alignment with those hips, that solid foundation that we have, right? That's how you get heavy squat. So this is more of a correct version of the squat. Okay, moving on. Front plank, another common one. A lot of things going on with this one. It's basic movement, but a lot of issues pop up. So as I'm doing this movement, a couple cues that we need to coach on here. What do you guys see?
Your head and butt are too high.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Both of those. Yep. So a lot of times they drive their head up, right? We need that straight line, that neutral spine that you guys talk about, and those hips need to be down, that core tight. What else? Something about the elbows. What do you guys think?
Elbows are flared out.
Yeah, and I don't have them right underneath them, solid foundation, right? I tried to exaggerate it, but it's kind of hard to do. But so yeah, so what we want to do, straight, long line from head to toe, which is basically spinal alignment. Any kind of coaching cues you guys use for any of those mistakes I made in that first one?
Butt down.
Okay, yep, butt down. Okay, anything else?
Flex the abs as you're doing it.
Oh, what'd you say?
Flex the abs as you're doing it. Keep the
Yep.
core.
Yep, flex the abs, butt tight. Yep. What else, guys?
Elbows under the shoulder.
Yep, elbows under shoulder. Yep, good job. Yep, that's another good one. Because right, they're either too far or too far under. That's not good for the shoulder. Another one I like to use is don't be a banana, right? That's a common thing people see, right? They're either this way or they're the other way, right? So they're either upright banana or upside down banana, however you want to think about it. So that's another one I like to use. Squeeze the glutes, like you guys mentioned. Straight line from elbow to shoulder, like you guys also mentioned. So this is more of a correct version. I'm going to skip over that. You guys really don't need to see that. All right, glute activation bridge. This is another one we see a lot of issues with, and it's just getting activation of the glute. So here's typical. Kind of looks like I'm doing it right, but there's some major things wrong with this. What do you guys see?
Hips aren't going up at all, really.
Yep, my hips are not all the way up. So sometimes people will be like in this bridge position, but they're not all the way up in the hips. So what else?
They're not sitting on their heels. They're trying to put more force into the whole foot rather than power into the, basically structure on the bottom.
Yep. Awesome. So coaching cues for this. Pen and needle raising up. So what I like to do is coach on having a needle underneath your butt, and that needle's coming up. So you got to get that butt up. So that's another cue I use. Do you guys use anything else? Focusing on hips or anything?
I tell them just imagine I tied a rope to your belt and I'm pulling you up to the ceiling.
Oh, I like that one a lot. That's a really good one. So if you guys didn't hear him, he said he ties a rope to their belt and he pulls it up, which is a great coaching technique. I love that one, Kyle. Beautiful. Anything else? No? Okay. So once again, squeezing the butt at the top, right? We need to get that activation going. Drives the hips to the sky is another one. Line from hips to shoulder, right? So we should see that diagonal line all the way through. So the other thing too is some people do flat foot. So make sure you're driving those heels into the ground and are forcing that all the way up. Lateral squat, this is in your dynamic warm-up. So we should be talking about this one a lot. Doing the lateral squat here is typically wrong. Okay, so what are you guys seeing that I'm doing wrong in there?
You're leaning more.
Leaning more, yep.
You're driving the weight through your knee.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So those are some major ones where they'll lean too far forward. They're putting too much weight in the knee instead of the hip. Yep. And the other thing, too, is I didn't demonstrate it in the video, but their feet will move, right? So their feet will turn out as they go into the stretch. So just make sure that foot's straight and they're not turning it and it's not going up either. So we want to sit in that hip, not in the knee. Push that butt back, hip hinge, then sit. Okay, so pushing that butt back teaches that hip hinge, then we sit down. And then feet in concrete too, they can't move at all. So that kind of helps visualize not moving those feet in any direction. Any other coaching cues you guys use?
Sit into your heels.
Sure, I like that one a lot. Yep, another way of doing it. Anyone else? Good. Okay. So here's the correct version. Sitting in my hips, going through the movement. They'll also try to bend that one leg, right, guys? So instead of like keeping it straight, we'll try to bend it. All right. This one you guys are going to get some entertainment out of, this next couple, before I let you go here. So I'm trying to do this stationary, and it's kind of hard. So typically when people run, so a lot of times when we're coaching sprinting, a lot of people do not know how to run properly. So when you guys are doing conditioning drills, you should be able to coach them on how to run properly. Unfortunately, this is not a lot of training you guys get with your certifications and things of that nature. So this is probably something you guys will have a learning area in, which will help you a lot. So typically, this is what we see. I'm kind of laughing here because it's hard to do because I'm used to running more correctly. But what am I doing here, guys? Let me replay it. What do you guys see I'm doing wrong? If you guys don't know, that's okay. I don't expect everyone to know these kind of cues here. Matt, you're a track coach. What's that?
Breath a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting unstable connection.
Elbows are flailing out. Your shoulders aren't backing out.
You look like a pissed off sailor.
That too, right? Yep. So I'm like, yeah, right? So I'm really high and tight. So like the problem is I'm not open. I'm high and tight. That's a very common issue when we do that. So, and then I'm also keeping my fingers forward. I'm not like going through the hip as much. So a good coaching cue on this one is mouth hip pocket, okay? We're talking about the hand hitting the mouth and hitting that hip and pocket and then right back up. I use the candy bar technique a lot. So that one is saying like, okay, I want you to grab the candy bar out of your back pocket and put it in your mouth, okay? Kind of teaches them to get that full range of motion and not being high and tight. Open those arms up a little bit. So loose and open, not high and tight. So once again, in the correct form here that I'm demonstrating for you guys, it's going to be a little bit more jittery here in the beginning because it's kind of weird doing it stationary, but kind of see my hands going past that hip, elbows are at 90. All right, so you guys get some entertainment here. This one I'm even laughing at myself because I was trying to do this in my work pants, and it's really kind of hard to get that knee drive and everything with the work pants. But let's go over sprinting lower. Typical. You guys are going to laugh at this one too because this is typically what you guys see at the facilities. Let me play this here. So what are you guys seeing here? See this a lot, right? You guys there? Looks like I got technical issues going on.
Chad?
You guys there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm in wonderful Oregon here. They have awesome internet. Hold on one second. You guys still there?
Yep.
Oh, you guys are coming back now. All right, I'm getting you back. Did you guys see the video or no?
No.
Okay. So let's go back. I think we're getting internet again. All right, so this is what you guys typically see at the clubs, right? When people are trying to run. So what are you guys seeing there that's incorrect?
Everything.
Yeah, right? Point out on some of those.
Leading with the feet rather than knees.
Yep. Yep. The other thing is I'm heel striking, right? So a lot of people will try to run like they walk. They just literally heel strike as they run. You'll hear it on the treadmills. You'll hear like thump, 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 thump instead of a tap. If they're running appropriately, you should hear more of a tap instead of a thump. So that's like a braking force, right? Slowing them down, but also a lot of stress on the knee. The other thing too was I'm getting like no knee bend whatsoever. You'll see people trying to run, and there's literally no knee drive, okay? So a good coaching cue is knee up, toe up, okay? Get that toe up and driving that knee up, and we want to land on the balls of the feet, okay? So striking on the balls of the feet, not the heel. Knee drive should be up to 90. And this is where you guys get the laugh because I'm in my dress pants trying to do this stuff, so it looks kind of goofy. Pretty bad, right? So I said correct, kind of, because my pants are super tight there. Not good, for example, but we'll do it again anyway because it's a good laugh. So you can see I'm getting my knees up, balls of the feet a little bit more. You guys get the point. I know, Matt, you're loving it. You're loving it. I get it. Yep. All right. So gotta laugh at yourself sometimes, right? So bent over rope. This is actually a more advanced one, guys, and I'm going to get moving because I know we're getting short on time. But this is one that we try to implement too soon in programming a lot of times. It's a lot more advanced than what you guys think, especially for the clientele you're working with. So here's what we typically see, right? So what are you guys seeing here as the video's going?
Too far bent over and your elbows are flaring way out.
Yep. What else?
Kind of a rounded back.
Yep, rounded back. Yep. So you see that a lot. They almost like, I was trying to do it, but they locked their legs tight instead of like getting that hip hinge and slight knee bend and pushing out, getting that down there a little bit. So a lot of layers to this movement. So a slight knee bend, pushing the butt out. Don't bounce and use momentum. So a lot of times you'll see with people with load, they'll like literally like swing it up and bounce. So they should be solid when they do it. That head should be down. A lot of times they're like looking way up with that neck. So make sure their head is like in alignment, just like any other movement. And flat back. So think of there's a broomstick from the back to the butt, right? So it's a little bit more, on the elbows not flaring out, right? So someone said that as well. So once again, the movement here, it's a little bit better version of it. Pull-ups. So here's what we typically see. Right, so they're going way too far forward. They're trying to almost like pull through their body when they do this kind of stuff. So I'll play it one more time so I can put, oops. They're doing this, they're pushing through like this. Their elbows are going way back. So coaching cues on this, what would you guys say?
Chest to the ceiling.
Okay, cool, like that one.
Pull your elbows towards your rib cage.
Yes, love that. Yep, love that one. Yep, because that's one of the major issues we see. They're flaring it back. Yep, cool. So think about pulling the bar down to your chest, not the body up to the bar. Sometimes that helps cue things for them. Also, body should be dead weight, so they got to engage that core. So think about gauging the core. If you tell them to think their body's dead, they can't move it, it kind of helps them from swinging and kicking too much. Also, pull the elbows down to the side, just like Jen said there. So this is more of a correct version. You can see my body's dead. Elbows are going more to the side. I'm not like pushing through. And what someone else said is the chest is up, right? Going chest to the bar. Wood chops. All right, this is another one that we try to implement way too soon as trainers sometimes because there's so much to this movement. So here's what we typically see. All right, so what do you guys pick out in that?
Too much bite. Oh, go ahead.
Arms aren't locked out.
Yep, correct.
You're almost using the lower part of your back to like finish the movement and your hips to pull it through rather than your abdominals.
Yep, beautiful. Good job, guys. So a lot of mistakes we make is definitely going too heavy in this movement too, right? But keeping the arms straight, we need those straight. And the pass should be like that 45-degree turn doing it. So 45, rotate through the core. All right, guys, we got through all those movements. So hopefully the coaching cues helped you guys a little bit. Also, I learned one today, which is pretty cool. I like that rope one, Kyle. Love it. So we're gonna go through a quiz here. Answer these the best you can. How do we make it make sense for clients to use with verbal cues?
Keep it simple.
Yep. Use everyday things and explanation and keeping it simple. Exactly. Why do we coach from the toe and up, guys?
Make sure you're using the full range of motion and you're not cutting out or cheating on anything.
Yep.
Keeps us on track too, not all over the place.
Yeah, beautiful. Yep, correct, guys. It keeps you on track so you don't forget everything, and it's easier for them to learn. Generally speaking, what movements do clients need to master first before anything else?
The base movements.
Yep, which are?
Squat, hip hinge.
Yep.
Squats.
Push and pull.
Yep, push, pull, hip hinge, squat. Yep. What is a typical load progression for upper and lower body for the limbs?
2.5 to 5.
10 and 10 to 5.
5 to 10 lower.
Yep, correct. Yep. So 5 to 10 lower, uppers 2.5 to 5 pounds. Perfect. Cool. So hopefully this guy's helped you guys, because this is common things we see a lot at the clubs and facilities. Trying to keep that cool stuff for later. So let's look at getting attendance here. I'll stop recording.